What's going on, y'all? It is Brian and Fearless with the Trial and Error podcast.
It's going
So,
down.
so this week, I think we're going to talk about something that is old as social media itself. From the moment that you could first type your half thoughts into a chat board, um, is arguing on social media, and so we're going to talk about um, the illusion of winning arguments on social media. And I got
Um,
some real life stuff to address, but also talking about the idea of um, this idea that people have to agree with what you believe. Like there's no room for any kind of disagreement. Like we can't, and it's not even agree to disagree. It's you're I can't exist until you see things my way, kind of stuff. And so that's what we're going to talk about today.
right.
And so, but yeah, my name is Brian. I run a media company called the Media Room / I Sell Words. My goal is to teach people how to build video marketing systems to grow their business. That's what I got.
And I'm a philosopher. So,
All right.
boom, pop, boom.
So today, and I think one of the things we can discuss is because both Fearless and I are of an age where we're old enough to remember life before social media, right? And one of the challenging things about life before social media is it's hard to explain it to people that weren't there. But before social media, for specific topics, in order to hear somebody's opinion about specific topics, somebody that you're a friend with, you actually had to kind of have a conversation with them about said topic, or they had to introduce it in some kind of flow. Like there wasn't you couldn't read their threads, you couldn't read their posts or anything. And so I think for a long time, we existed without really necessarily having to deal with opinions that oppose our own on a day-to-day basis, just because the social contract and people trying to be friendly with one another and stuff like that. And one of the things on social media that has spawned is now you can see what your friends think about things all the time, depending on how much they post and how political their content is.
Mhm.
And I think that is a new. I feel like that's a new condition for us as people, as human beings, where you can see exactly what is going through a friend or family member's head and their exact opinion on topics that we used to not discuss, like politics, religion, all that other stuff. And so now it's kind of open season, and I think we're starting to see a lot of people actually grapple with that. What are you thinking?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, back in the day, it was everything was word of mouth
Yeah.
or the rumor mill, which it kind of still is. But today, there's receipts
Right.
for the things that you say, the things that you've done. And then the other thing, too, is that there's no filter.
Yeah. That's the
You know
other
what I'm saying?
side.
Like, there's no filter on anything. So, if people mess with you, they mess with you. If they don't, they don't. And they'll tell you why,
Yeah.
or at least come up with some excuse of why they mess with you versus why they don't, which is okay too.
Yeah, that's fine. And I'm cool with that aspect of it. I think what happens is sometimes there's some people that they've gone their entire life without hearing an opinion that contradicts their own. And so as soon as they experience one, it's like a mandate, some kind of mandate from God that they have to convince you to see things their way.
Hmm.
And if they can't convince you, they're going to lump you into a specific category of people that they don't want to interact with and stuff like that. And so I think we've kind of crossed that event horizon where you can't. It's almost like um, we have people that, in order for them to be in their soul, in order for you to be in their social circle, you have to be in complete and utter agreement and moral alignment with everything they do.
Hmm.
And I think as human beings, we do have our red lines, like, right? Like there's certain things, certain people I'm not going to interact with or rock with based on their beliefs about specific things or their actions on certain things, right? But then there are other sides where it's like it's just a minor political disagreement or minor moral misalignment, And I think people are getting to that point where they need everybody that's in their social circle to be perfectly morally aligned. And I almost feel like sometimes that creates an echo chamber.
I agree. Like I do not disagree with that.
You know,
Like it has to be like a hive mind type of thing that this is what we're going and that's it.
yeah.
So like, yeah, I get it.
There is no in between. Like you have to see exactly how I see things on this specific issue. And if not, then something is wrong with you. Or I have to recontextualize the nature of our relationship. And I do feel like that's kind of becoming this endemic thing on social media. So I wanted to discuss, and I think we're starting to see more of it on you're starting to see more like on Jubilee and stuff like that's one of the bigger channels on YouTube now. Whereas all it is just people arguing with one another. And it's not even really real argumentation. It's I make a point and then we bicker back and forth. Or I make a point and then the other person berates me with all kinds of other talking points. So it's not even the debate level. It's just arguing for the sake of arguing.
Right. And Matt's most of the time there's no fact checking on either side of it. Now you may come and you may already know what your facts are, but the sad thing about that is that I can drop 3 lies. 3.
Yeah.
Right. And for every lie that I drop, you have to then go behind me and then contradict that with the truth, with this, that, and the other. So the truth takes way more time than a lie does. And by the time you hit me with the truth, I done lied about 5 or 6 more things.
Right.
That you now have to come behind me and fact check everything that I just said. So it's there's no use to talking to somebody who, or I should say whom, doesn't want to know anything more than what they know. Yeah. Now, if I'm talking to a person and you're okay and you're open to changing your mind, if you're okay to opening up and changing your idea on some stuff, I'll be more than happy to talk about this. But there's nothing to talk about if you're not gonna budge.
Right.
I'm wasting my breath and you're wasting yours.
Yeah.
I think we're good on that.
And I think it is drawing that line in the sand. Are we arguing? Are we debating to seek knowledge and expand our understanding? Are we debating for understanding? Or are we debating for entertainment?
Right.
Or as a distraction? And I think more times than not, our debates, specifically in the online space, they end up getting reduced down to, I'm just debating because I'm distracted. I need a distraction from the other things I got going on.
I need to do something else, right?
Yep. I need to crash into somebody else because my mind needs stimulation, and that's kind of what it is. And so, and that's where I feel like but I feel like that's where our discourse is. I remember growing up, there was a show on CNN called Crossfire, and I
remember
that was early stage, and people didn't necessarily react the best way to it. People are like, this is kind of a dark point in political discourse and blah blah blah. And now we got 1,000 crossfires going on.
That was with Chris something.
Yeah, on Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson started there. But it was just 2 people sitting down arguing something, and then that ended up becoming an entire format. Since I'm a sports nerd, that ended up hijacking ESPN's entire daytime format. It's literally 2 people sitting at a desk yelling
Chris Matthews.
But and then because initially a lot of the Sunday morning political talk shows used to be more roundtables, where somebody would they would present their political point and somebody else may counter it, or they may just present a opposing point without necessarily directly countering that person. But the debate arguing culture has taken hold so much. Like I said, it poisoned ESPN's entire daytime lineup of sports programming, where it's literally just two people sitting there arguing about it. And neither one of them may even actually believe in the thing that they're saying. They're just doing it because it's good television. And they're
And
going to make
unfortunately they got to double down on whatever it is that they're talking about.
Yeah. They got to make a soundbite. I mean, Stephen A. Smith built a whole career off of it. And to the point where he's even contradicting himself openly and people are pointing it out. Nobody cares. Because that's the end of the day. At the end of the day, for some people, it doesn't matter if you point out they're being hypocritical. Okay, and point.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a hypocrite. I don't care. This is what I'm saying now.
But here's the thing, though. I don't know if that's actually a thing about being hypocritical, or that's just a thing about growing up and changing your views on certain things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so it's so crazy when people are like, well, you voted for this 20 years ago, but now you're switching up. Like, of course you're going to switch up.
Right.
Why would I keep the same ideology that I had 20 years ago as a 27-year-old man, as opposed to a 47-year-old man? I don't think the same way that guy does.
Yeah.
There's certain principles that he had that I still have, but there's certain belief structures, there's certain ideas that neither one of us has. Like we don't have them.
And I'm cool with that, where your perspective evolves over time. I'm talking about your perspective doubles down when something you believe isn't false, or somebody pokes a hole in something that you deeply believe, and you don't worry about the level of, well, you just said this like 5 minutes ago and now you're coming back and contradicting the thing. And you're doing this to win an argument. You're doing this to win an interaction. To me, there's a difference between I'm saying this to win an interaction versus I'm saying this as a sign of growth. And this is what I used to believe, and this is what I believe now. Like, my stances have evolved on, a lot of hot button political issues and things like that. The carceral state, and, the death penalty and all kinds of other stuff. I've mellowed out on a lot of different things that I used to be really strident on. And that's just part of growing and experiencing the world. But there's a difference between being evolved past where you used to be and then just being nakedly hypocritical just because you're confronted with the reality that your actions don't match your words. Or, you know what I'm saying? That's where I draw a line.
So I was, as you were talking about that, a couple things that popped into mind was Buddha. And the Buddha said that there's 4 simple truths. And one of them is that the first one is that there's going to be suffering, period. Yep. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. There's no getting around it. It's going to be some suffering, period. The other thing that he said was the reason why a lot of us suffer and struggle is because of our attachments to things. Not just physical, but mentally attaching ourselves to certain things as opposed to letting it go. Right. And, it's so funny, man. There's a movie, one of my favorite movies is Dogma by Kevin James. Jay and Silent Bob.
Kevin Smith.
Kevin Smith, yes. Jay and Silent Bob. Chris Rock is in it. Ben Affleck and all them, like my favorite movie. And Chris Rock was actually the 13th apostle. And he said, he was talking to the last prophet. And she asked him, she said, what was Jesus like? And Chris was like, he was quiet. He just liked to sit around and listen to people talk. He said the one thing that he didn't like was things being carried out in his name, murders, wars, disagreements, all this stuff.
Hmm.
And he said he didn't understand why you guys have a belief system in him as opposed to an idea. And and then he goes on to say that because I think she questions like, what do you mean by the difference between a belief and an idea? He said people kill, they die for beliefs.
Yeah.
Ideas are easier to change. You know, I mean, you can change an idea. Beliefs are a whole lot harder. And I've always taken that with me with everything. That some of the things that I may believe, maybe let's kick the legs out from under it
Hmm.
and call them ideas, not beliefs.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
I know
At
what you mean.
least from myself. And I I started asking myself, philosophical questions like, what does Thursday look like? If all of us were to go to sleep and um all the calendars were taken away and we have to start all the way over with calendars, right?
Hmm.
There's no time. I mean, we got time, but no days are gone. They're everywhere. They're gone.
Hmm.
What does Thursday look like?
Looks like any other day.
Any other day?
Hmm.
You Thursday for the most part is based on what you're doing.
Right.
So there has to be an event that happens on this particular day that lets you know that it's Thursday. The weekend doesn't look any different. Oh, I like that. It looks like a moon face. There you
Hmm.
go, that part too. But even with that though, the moon doesn't show you like what Thursday looks like. It just shows you where the sun is during certain times. But I just kind of thought about that. I like that idea that that's all it is an idea.
Hmm.
If we were to switch everything up, it wouldn't be different. You know what I'm saying? There would be no difference.
Yeah.
I mean, at least to me, it wouldn't.
One of the things I used to have to tell my workers, and it was kind of a hard explanation to them, is um, when you there's a weird thing where once you start getting down to somebody's core beliefs and their fundamental understanding of the world or how they believe how the world should work or operate, that's where you really, really, really start getting into um, more primal kind of behaviors where somebody feels like they're fighting for their existence. And it's really common when you're dealing with families and stuff that may have different levels of dysfunction or whatnot. And you have to prove to them that the world they believe is really just an example of their own brain. And that's where and I told my workers, you got to prepare for it. When you upset somebody's entire understanding of the world, you're going to see behaviors that you would never expect out of them. We used to see it with kids that we get in that came from environments where they were dealing with such a complete sense of lack that they're in a place where there's abundance and they're being taken care of and people are looking out for them. You would always see a kind of explosion of really crazy behaviors. And that's like, that's a natural thing. And I think we encounter that online where somebody doesn't quite understand why they believe what they believe. They haven't taken any level of introspection on it, but then something comes along that completely turns that on its ear. And that's where you get these flame wars and these long screeds and people, threatening people and all that other stuff. And it's a really weird place to start dancing on when you start touching on people's core beliefs. But I think I think it is a necessary step. If you're really looking to grow as a human being, sometimes you need to sit down and why do I believe what I believe? Where did this come
Mhm.
from? And what is this rooted in? And what are things that are so core to me that will absolutely upset my fundamental understanding of the world versus what are some things that are just that are more like ideas, like you said. So
Yeah, ideas versus beliefs. Yeah.
it's only from metering the employee. Yeah, I think that's what we're talking about days of the week. I do think that that's kind of what it is.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure.
If you can't meter at time restraints, you cannot keep a timber. That's true.
What is timber? What is that? Timber? Hold on, I'm gonna have to look that word up. I've never heard that word.
Unique character or unique quality or character of a sound that distinguishes different voices or instruments, even in the same pitch or volume.
Okay, so what does that have to do with time constraints? You cannot keep. I don't understand the reference.
Auditory cessation that enables the listener to judge two non-identical sounds.
Could you explain that a little bit? I'm not understanding the reference there.
I could throw in mine, but I'm allowed allow them to put it in there. I'm thinking that you can't figure out your own specific cadence or workflow or style. And what to expect out of that person. At least that's how I'm kind of perceiving timbre. I know I'm familiar with it from music a little bit, but to use it in kind of this
right, yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah,
like because I think that they have this in the option setting in a car, but I've never understood it or heard it from the context of having a conversation.
And we're both word
that wasn't musically inclined. So
and we're both word nerds, and so we want to know. So see if this something.
And again, if I don't know something, I'm asking. Like I don't understand that or whatever. So yeah, please explain.
If we need to throw it in the lexicon, let us know. That's a word that I need to be throwing into.
Well, yeah, for sure.
So, like I said, I understand it in the concept of musical instruments.
Okay, yeah.
And voices and stuff like that. A specific sound. And so I'll ask for a lot of people that are 10 toes down in the Facebook or Twitter or Threads or Instagram or YouTube arguments and comments. What does winning an online argument actually look like? What does it mean when you win?
To win an online argument?
Yeah.
I think it's more egotistical than anything else. You know what I mean? Like, I think that it's more egotistical. Ego.
Yeah.
It's what you win. You get to inflate your ego a little bit. And depending on who you're arguing for or what you're arguing against, I don't know. For me, that's why people argue. You know what I mean? I mean, think about people that are sent to prison for years, for life, given a death penalty because somebody argued that that they should be there. And then come to find out that person had absolutely nothing to do with any of that.
And it's something I've said multiple times, Fearless. We've talked about it on here. In court, it's never about the truth. Truth doesn't matter in the court of law.
No.
It never is. It's about who can present the most compelling argument. And more times than not, the factual argument is the one that sounds the worst. Because sometimes it has wild things that you can't explain. Well, why was the suspect or the plaintiff there? Or why was the defendant there? It just was pure random dumb luck that they happened to be there. Well, why? Right. And the more compelling narrative is they were there to do X, Y, and Z and harm such and such, right? That's the narrative that our brains will accept as human beings because it makes sense in terms of what our narrative bias is, where we have a bias towards a story. But if it says it was pure random luck, they just happened to be there, there was no rhyme or reason, they just happened to be in the same place at the same time, that we don't like that as an answer. It's too ambiguous. The human brain does not like that level of ambiguity. It will not deal with it. And so
we like everything real simple.
It will manufacture a lie to keep the narrative intact. And that is that's our narrative bias. We will create something that is completely and fundamentally untrue that sounds like a more complete narrative than believe an incomplete narrative that is actually true. It's a crazy thing. That's why a lot of times, when you look at court cases, they're like, well, he's, a court of law and jury of his peers. And it's like, yeah, but what was the story that was being told? What evidence was being suppressed? What didn't they hear? What part of the story did they not hear in order to create the narrative? Because it's easier to convince people, well, he was there to do X, Y, and Z, and that's why he was there, than it was dumb luck.
And that's crazy that
construction.
That there's certain stuff. Hey, keep talking. I'll be right back.
Okay. It's one of those things where we have this weird preference and this weird bias, and so it's easier to get somebody to believe a true sounding lie than a lie than if it's a lie that sounds like it's plausible. It's easier to get people to believe that than it is to get people to believe something that is true but sounds improbable. And that's human nature. And until we can get past that point consistently, you're always going to have cases of somebody who ends up getting on death row for something they didn't do, because one side presented a compelling story, a compelling mistruth. It sounded like it could be true.
Mm-hmm.
I say at this point, we live in a world that doesn't make sense. I think we've always kind of existed in that. We were not really good at understanding ourselves. And I think sometimes that's maybe the first point, like the first grasp of it, that we're not really good at understanding how our brains work. Our brains aren't, I had to tell somebody a long time ago, our brains aren't wired for happiness. They're wired to keep you alive.
That's it.
It's not wired to make you happy or sad. It's wired to keep you alive. Everything else in between is, that's kind of something that you have to manage. But, if you're saying, well, you're depressed because your brain's out of whack, well, the chemistry might be different in your brain, but your brain ain't wired to keep you alive. It ain't wired to keep you happy. It's wired to keep you alive.
Yeah, to keep you alive. Yeah.
The other stuff you got to manage. You have to find ways externally to manage the other things that are going on, whether it's medication, whether it's cognitive behavioral therapy, whatever it is. You have to find that thing. Your brain doesn't necessarily seek some kind of mental balance. It just doesn't. It seeks balance to keep your respiratory system running and keep your heart pumping,
right.
And those other impulses that keep you alive and keep you from harm. But the other stuff is not that great.
No, not at all.
And so, and this ain't even on my notes, but I think the way that I think this compulsion to want to be right in arguments is assuming that everything in the world follows logic and that everybody follows a specific set of logic.
And your logic.
Yeah. And I'm logical, but you're emotional. That kind of argument. And I've seen that manifest so many times on the internet where I'm looking at this from a purely rational point of view. No, you're not. You're not. Like, it's physically impossible for you to do that. Because even our most logical stances are still informed by what our emotions about a thing is. If you ever read a case of somebody whose logic center is completely separated from their emotional center in their brain, they can't function. They can't function outside in the world because they can never make a decision.
Right.
Even our most logical thoughts are still informed by our what's going on emotionally with us. Because what's logical when my emotions are this way would be completely illogical when my emotions are this way. What's the most logical pizza place to go to?
Godfathers,
Why?
because it's amazing.
Right. But the reason why
And
you think,
ain't nothing else to discuss on that.
yeah, and the reason why you think the reason for you why it's amazing is because you have specific emotions tied to how good it was last time. But for some people, they might, well, shoot, it's Little Caesars, man, because it's the cheapest.
Ugh. Nah, don't nobody eat Little Caesars.
And for some people, it's this super expensive place because it's super expensive and high quality. It really depends. It's all what your emotions are tied to the thing. I can say I like my favorite color is black because blah 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 blah. It's just my favorite color is black. I just have my own reasons.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Chris.
What number are you on?
I was actually on. I think I was on 3 or 2. What winning looks like what you actually get from winning. We could move on to 3 because you mentioned protect your ego and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the role of the audience because I want you to get into that.
Oh yeah, that's good stuff. Okay, you are rarely arguing with just the other person. You're actually performing for your followers, your peers, people who agree with you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And this changes the goal from understanding to presentation.
There it is.
That's deep. Mm-hmm. That changes the role from understanding to presentation. And I think if you notice on that Jubilee, that's what they're doing. They're performing in front of other people.
Mm-hmm. They're incentivized to perform.
Yeah, they're incentivized, right? Because then you start clapping, and then but then when people start disagreeing, they put those red flags up.
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, so again, it's like, nah, you're good.
Well, even right? It's not even if they disagree. It's if the performance falters, if it looks like they aren't performing as well in their argument as they should, that's when they get pulled off the stage because now their argument doesn't look as solid. And so it's not as compelling. And so now they can put up the flag and say, yeah, their argument's kind of falling off of a cliff because the person they're sitting there, because more times than not, and I'm just be honest with you, they'll bring in, and the Jubilee format is, we'll bring in somebody who's incredibly knowledgeable about specific said area, and we're going to bring in a bunch of people that got an opinion about a bunch of other things, but they're not really experts in this specific thing that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And what it is they blitz this person who actually has some kind of inter knowledge about said thing, or maybe even it may not even be a working knowledge, just maybe a deeper understanding. They pop them with questions, hit them with questions, and pelt them with questions, and then the person who they're up against will either answer the questions or see the point. More times than not, it's they're sparring with somebody who is a little bit more knowledgeable, and that's what it looks like. And so invariably, at some point, when you reach the limit of your knowledge, your argument starts to sound like shit. So that's what happens.
Right. Regurgitated bullshit.
Right. And I think that's kind of the formula that Jubilee has mastered. And people think something's being accomplished. You're not accomplishing anything. A lot of those people are actors that are on casting calls, bro. Like, that's really what it is. If you go to the website, it's just a bunch of actors or people who have social media presences that they're trying to elevate.
I've seen that too. Like when somebody will get on there and they'll debate, so-called debate with somebody, and they do really well. They'll get on their TikTok, they'll get on Instagram or whatever. I'm like, yeah, if you want to know more about my beliefs and this and the other, just follow me. And then they'll start talking about, yeah, this is how I dismantled such and such and such, or whatever. So again, though, I like that though about the understanding versus the presentation, which is funny because most of the stuff that I do, I'm always asked, like, why don't you ever put that online? why don't you ever tell anybody about yourself? And I always tell people that success doesn't come with the studio audience. Success comes off shit that you do. It ain't got nothing to do with other people. At least to me, it doesn't. So if I'm out flying somewhere to go pick up something that means a lot to me, what do I need to show you a picture of that for?
Right.
I don't need to be braggadocious on anything. Like I'm happy that I did this or I got that, but I don't need to. I don't need somebody to merit, or I don't need that congratulatory type of what I'm saying thing or whatever just because I accomplished something. There's some shit I'll just keep to myself.
Right.
So for me, it's never really the audience. It's me. Like if anything, I am my audience.
Yeah. And I get that. For me, I'm envious of that because I have to think about my audience because that's the field I'm in. Marketing, when I do marketing for other businesses and stuff, I constantly have to evaluate the audience and try to gauge what reaction they're going to give me based on what we put in front of them. And it can make you to the point where you overweigh people's opinions about stuff. And you try to engineer their behaviors based on your words, and then your words end up losing any potency because they're so well thought out that you've stripped all the emotion, you strip the barren of any kind of emotion. And that's the dilemma of the marketer. That's why a lot of times marketers have a very difficult time marketing themselves. And if you talk to multiple marketers, it's the same thing across the board. We can push other people's stuff to the moon, but when it comes to talking about our own stuff, we end up running out of the words. And that's an ongoing challenge. And that's the difference between the marketing and advertising. Advertising, you get a bunch of at bats, and sometimes the advertising works and it connects, and other times it doesn't, and you're just on to the next thing. The marketer has to think about multiple layers about, okay, does this alienate our audience? Okay, this ad didn't go over well, and we lost a significant amount of the audience, so we have to figure out how to re-engage them and all the other stuff. We have to think on a whole nother level. And so I'm envious of that because I always end up having to think about the audience, and sometimes it's thinking about the audience experience way too much.
And that's why I don't. You know what I mean? Like I don't. I think if anything, it's when I talk about certain things, it's to be understood or whatever. And because teaching is just one of those things that I love to do. I love to give people information that they may or may not have. So that's my objective. Kind of like a maven, give you as much information that you'll need so you can go about your way. But to have followers, to do this and the other, I have like 5,000 so-called friends on Facebook. I don't know most of them. Do you know what I'm saying? I'm gonna say that I don't know most of them. I don't. One day, I sat and I was like, "Hey, how long will it take me to get to 5,000 friends?" And then I just started befriending everybody. Like I would just go through, click, 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 and then for like a month or so, people would just accept. So then it got to like 5,000 friends, and you know what I did? And then what I noticed I didn't know before is that if you start putting stuff up, unless they mess with you on a consistent basis, they're never going to see any of your posts.
Exactly.
Any of them.
And you can change a little bit by paying for it, but even that doesn't change the game too much if they're not interested or unengaged.
Nope.
And see, for me, it got to a point, and this is going to sound crazy, but it turns to an overcompensation kind of thing where I'm like, well, shoot, I think too much about what the audience thinks, so I'm gonna get out here and post this and crazy thing and see how people respond to it.
Right.
And so it's a double-edged thing. But I think specifically on social media, we misinterpret what an audience actually is. Because I could talk about the mechanics behind that entire thing. You have 5,000 people on your feed or in your friends list. Maybe less than 1% of them see what you post on a daily basis, and all that depends on their level of engagement with you. That's a real thing. And I think oftentimes people on social media, specifically businesses on social media, struggle with that concept. Well, our page is this size. We got all these followers. Well, just because you got all those followers doesn't mean they may not see a third of what you post. It's so many different things where they have to send signals to that social media platform that they are interested in it. I finally got to the point where I'm seeing most of my family stuff. For a long time, I couldn't even see most of the stuff my family is posting on a daily basis. And it became intentional about engaging with the stuff. But then here's the last thing. For those that, if your social media is depressing you and you're logging on and seeing all the bad news and everything that you don't like, and media personalities that infuriate you, or political people that you don't like, you need to tailor what you engage with. If you're always arguing about this, that, and the third, then your social media platform is going to say they engage with this thing. They may not like it. It may not be a positive engagement, but they engage with it. Show them more of said thing. So if you are tired of seeing videos about people getting, such and, X amount of people got murdered and blah, 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 and, this horrible thing happened to these kids and all this other stuff, you got to stop sharing that stuff. You have to stop engaging in it. You have to stop liking it and sharing it to your friends, because once you stop doing that, your algorithm will say, okay, well, they're not engaging with this anymore, so let's show them other stuff.
Yeah, my algorithm is weird. I got some.
Mine is a mix of comic books and current events and like food videos, and that's about it. And marketing stuff, because I do follow a lot of marketers.
Like my algorithm is like on some Ripley's Believe It or Not type shit.
Yeah.
Like my stuff is weird. It's so bad that like Jessica would be like, dude, please don't send me anything else. Like she's like, dude, please don't send me nothing.
So let's go. Let me see where we're at, because we were talking about the audience, and more times than not, the debater is they're not trying to win the debate as opposed to win the audience's approval. And the audience ends up becoming the target of who you're talking to, and not the person you're debating. And so, more times than not, you're playing for the crowd. You're in front of the crowd. You're on the stage when you're in these debates, and you're trying to see how other people react to them. And I think a lot of times, especially with the political ones, it turns into, well, did you dunk on them in the comments? We dunked on them in the comments, which means they got a bunch of likes on a thing that they said, but was the thing you said actually accurate, or did it just get the most likes? And I think oftentimes it falls into, well, it got the most people liking it. Well, just because a lot of people like a thing doesn't mean that they're correct.
Right.
And so that's what it is. Are you playing to the person? Are you playing to the crowd? Or are you debating for the sake of knowledge, gaining knowledge, or are you debating to win the engagement? Those two things aren't the same thing. And we've seen it, and it's not even just social media. It's presidential debates, it's political debates that you see on television. They're not arguing. They're arguing to win the audience, and they're arguing to win the engagement. They're not arguing from a place of truth, because the people that tell the truth more times than not lose.
Bad.
They lose badly.
And sadly enough, the people who actually want the best for you lose too.
Yeah. Because
bad.
because and it's just a natural function of human behavior. When you want the best for a lot of people, or you're driven to tell the truth, you have to you have to try to put very uncomfortable truths in front of people, and people don't like the truth. People want to be lied to, and I'm telling you this. I'm telling y'all this, and it sounds awful when I say it, but we would rather deal with a very, very pleasant looking lie than an uncomfortable truth, just as a baseline.
Yeah.
Because it informs our narrative bias. Like it goes into like it satisfies that narrative bias. And so people say they want their politicians to tell them the truth. No, they don't. They want their politicians to tell them things they want to hear.
Yeah. They don't want you. I mean, here's the thing, man. I think that if people understood how everything kind of ran, and you were to wake up and you were to see it for what it is, you probably wouldn't even go back to work. I ain't gonna lie. I mean, you probably just walk out of your house, go build a tent somewhere, and go grab yourself a book and chill out.
Mm-hmm.
Like I like being like I love sociology, like love it. And for those of you who may not understand what sociology is, it is basically the study of systems and how you pertain to that system.
Mm-hmm.
Again, like I gave the analogy of, and it's not just an analogy, it's a fact that I do when I'm playing my video games, football, basketball. Before I even start playing, I set the system to make me never lose, ever.
Mm-hmm.
And then I set the computer at like half. So they'll make half the shots, they'll do half the stuff, and it doesn't matter. I could pick the worst team and go up against the best team,
Mm-hmm.
and I will always win. And here's the other cool thing. It doesn't matter who I give the controller to, they'll win too. Because the system is set up for you to lose.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. If you do start winning, not a problem. I'll just adjust the system.
Just the sliders.
I'm not gonna adjust the team. No. I'll do it back here. Because whatever I do back here is going to affect out there. Done.
Yeah. And here's some. Go ahead.
So if you were to take that same analogy and use that for life, and then you were to sit down and you were to think about our politics, about our politicians, about our government, about America's history, about all of this, you'll start to see that same system that somebody's been fucking with to give you something different. And then while we're sitting there arguing with each other over fucking race,
Mm-hmm.
racial, these people are. There's no reason why we don't have a universal health care. There's no reason. There's no reason why we don't have free education. There's no reason why we don't have housing. There's no reason why we shouldn't have food. There's no reason why we shouldn't have the basic building blocks of life given to us by a government that we elect and put into office to look out for our best interests.
And collects money from us.
That collect money from us to give to other countries. To start shit with people in other countries. All I'm saying is that if that's what you want to do, cool. Whatever. Give us these things and go do your thing. You want to be the bully of the world? Do you. But make sure that this here is good to go.
So here's the thing, and this is kind of a logic exercise for people. It comes from
That's just what I think.
It comes from It's either You Are Not So Smart or Be Less Dumb. It's a book about cognitive science, but he talks about this very specific study. And basically, the study it was testing out humans' desire for fairness and how it interferes with what benefiting everybody. And so, more or less, it was a game where everybody had this fake currency that they're passing around, right? And as they go around, everybody has a certain amount of money. And as they go around, they make around, everybody puts a certain amount of money in the pot. You're not aware of how much money the person next to you puts in at first. You're all passing the money around. And at the end of the round, you all split it up, right? And you all get the same amount of money. And this game could go on indefinitely until it gets leaked, until it gets discovered that until somebody realizes I can put in less money and still get the same benefit. Then somebody starts putting in less money. And eventually the people in the game start becoming aware of it. And so they start putting in less money or refuse to put any money in at all. And eventually the game stops because there's not enough money to go around. But some people, when we're all benefiting, even though some of us are paying more into it to get the same benefit, the human brain doesn't really conceptualize, oh, we're all benefiting, we're all growing with this thing. More times than not, people latch on to this person over here isn't paying their full thing. They should not get the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I will hurt myself. I will injure my pockets to make sure that they're screwed. It's a really interesting study. If I can find it, I will post it in the thing. But
I've read stuff like that before too.
And it's a human nature thing. It goes into where everybody has to make the same contribution.
But hold on though. Is it though a human thing or is it a cultural thing?
I think I don't know. And that's where I'm saying. That's where
because that's my point. Because in certain places, they don't act like this.
But that goes into, okay, and so that we talked about a couple weeks ago. Remember we talked about Susu and how a lot of migrant communities have community lending within the community.
Correct.
Where people put into the pot, and when it's your time, you get the whole pot, and your job is you go out there, do what you need to do, but then you have to pay the pot back so the next person go off and do their thing. Well, a lot of it might be a cultural thing because you try to explain that to Americans who aren't familiar with the concept. I wouldn't do that. Why would I do that? But then at the same token, they're wondering how's this person, they just got here and they're able to afford to go to school. They just got here and they're able to afford this restaurant.
And that's what I'm saying. It's not a human thing. This is a cultural thing. America's score like extremely high or extremely low, depending on how you look at it, when it comes to individuality as opposed to community and culture, as opposed to a community. Mm-hmm. We don't give two fucks about a community, but we do care about ourselves individually and our family. Mm-hmm. That's it. So like, I remember I was talking to a friend of mine and we were talking about why don't we get free education? And her and her husband were saying that like if you want to go get an associate's, that's fine. Go. You know, that should be given to everybody. But any more schooling than that, you need to pay for that on your own. Because we shouldn't be responsible for blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, but we're already paying for it.
Yeah.
That money is already there. They just put it towards other stuff. So it's not like you're digging into more people's pockets. Like it's already there. You see what I'm saying? So schools started charging more once the government got involved. And they're like, well, we'll make it so that if they take these loans out, they have to pay it back. They won't be able to default. They won't be able not default. What is it? They can't use this. on like if they can't file for Chapter 11, that this is the one thing besides this and taxes are the one things you cannot file Chapter 11 for.
All right, I got a quote for you.
Okay.
You're gonna want to hear this. So that entire thing about free college landed on me. So for those that don't know, one of the reasons why we don't have free college anymore, because it used to be compulsory for free, especially, well, kind of for white people. I mean, there are racial elements to this too. We can't say it's not. But Ronald Reagan's one of the main reasons why college ain't free anymore. He started pretty much an all-out assault on the University of California system, where they had free education or compulsory education up until a certain point. And so, and no, this is a quote from one of his advisors, okay, who was kind of defending Reagan's attack on having access to free education. For them, the biggest thing was like beatniks and anti-war kids and stuff like that. But this man said, "We are in danger of producing an educated proletariat," announced Reagan advisor Roger A. Freeman during a press conference October 29, 1970. Freeman, an economics professor at Stanford, was also an advisor to President Nixon. "We have to be selective about who we allow to go through higher education." He said we have to be selective about who's allowed to be in higher education. So they started cutting funding and putting the burden on the students to provide their own education. In a society that is about growth,
Mm-hmm.
in a society that is about bettering yourself and chasing your dreams, why would an educated group of the proletariat, why would that be a threat? And a lot of it had to do with the fact that during the 60s and 70s, you were in revolutionary times, and a lot of the people that were rebuking the system or pushing back were also college educated kids.
And they love to read.
Right. So
I mean, even with the Black Panther Party,
those are
they
college
called
kids.
them all kind of stuff. But dude, they were extremely educated. Extremely. So they sat and they made sure that they knew the law, that they read the law. They knew it front and back.
Mm-hmm.
They had classes on it constantly. If you get pulled over, this is what you do. Like, seriously, I mean, it's no wonder why they dismantled that shit.
Mm-hmm.
There's no wonder.
Because you start removing people's ability to access education or putting it behind a paywall. Because here's the thing, people think, and this is the conversation we have all the time. And I know we even have people that watch the show frequently that will disagree with what I'm saying. The way we frame college, we frame it as only one type of value that you extract from higher education, and it's where it puts you in the job market. And
Correct.
For me, I think it goes beyond that. I don't think everybody has to go to college, but I think it should be an option for everybody that wants to go.
Yeah, for sure.
And for me, being in college forces you to understand that there are other people out there who have different perspectives about the world. And your knowledge about how things work isn't complete and it's not total. And it forces you to expand your horizons about things. That's why so many people, they talk about, well, I sent my kid out and they came back, blue hair and all this other stuff. They expanded who they were. They expanded their horizons and started. It's supposed to turn it. College is supposed to turn what your kids leave your house with. It's supposed to turn it on its ear a little bit to challenge them so they can grow into the kind of adults that are going to produce in society, as opposed to worker drones. And I think a lot of people view college simply as a degree mill where you get this degree and all of a sudden that's your career track. That world ceased to exist 50 years ago.
Gotcha.
That world where you go to college and you graduate and that's what you to get your degree in, that ceased to exist 50 years ago. I've had plenty of conversations about people who were sneering at kids going to get art degrees and stuff like that. And I'm like, I know multiple people who are six-figure earners who have art degree and they're working in their field. It's just not the way that you understand it. They're set designers on commercials and on broadcast. They design containers. They design containers for major corporations and stuff. They get paid a lot of money to do that. You know, they get hired for their aesthetic sense and stuff like that. But, well, art degree is useless. No, it's not. Not if you know what you do it with it.
Yeah, no, that's why I'm doing my thing in philosophy. And again, I mean, I've never seen a company hire specifically for philosophy, but I don't intend on getting a job working for anybody else. I know exactly what I'm going to use it for. And I assure you, I'm not going to say I'm the only person that does it, but I'm the only one that's going to put it out there the way that I do.
Yep.
So, like, yeah, I don't have absolutely no intention of working for another person. Working with you is one thing. For you, not at all.
Yeah, I tell people, if that's the case, if it turns into where I have to be 100% employed by somebody else, that's going to shorten my life because I've already been that place before. And I'm dead serious about it. You know, that's just something. It is one of those things, but we see this as a career track, and college hasn't been a career track in a long, long time. And more times than not, you're even seeing it where these major corporations are having entry level jobs where you have to come in with 2 years of experience and a master's degree at entry level. So they're not even serious about the game. You know what I'm saying? They're not even serious about what that's.
Think about that, dude. Man, like, you need a master's in certain jobs. And I was doing a paper on that, and they were saying that the reason why there's jobs now where you have to have a master's degree is because these employers can be picky now. They can be very picky now. So things that a high school student could do or whatever, they're like, well, this guy over here has a master's in such. If we can get him to do it for the same price that we would pay this high schooler to do it. Think about that. So the more college you go get, you're thinking, oh, this is going to advance myself. No, it is not. Because you got to remember, you're not the only person with a master's degree out there. If you were the only person within like a 3-mile radius, I would understand. But you're not. It's just like having a doctorate. Motherfucker, I know 4 doctors. Like, what are you talking about?
Well,
4 of them.
Here's the thing. So in a lot of companies, they'll post a job just because it's close to the earnings call. You don't know what we're talking about. Basically what it is they're trying to bump the price of their stock value up. And so they have to make it look like they're a growing company, and growing companies hire. So they'll post a job without ever having any intention of hiring anybody who applies for it.
Not at all.
That's the real game that's being played here. And so when we started gatekeeping education, and the only reason we started gatekeeping education was because they're forced to desegregate schools.
Say that again.
This is my opinion. I could be proven wrong, but the reason why we started gatekeeping education, because look at it with Reagan in the 70s, right? I don't think OPS got desegregated until like 1975 or something along those lines. The Omaha Public School District. It was late. It was late in the game. But as soon as we started desegregating schools and allowing everybody to have access to these schools, and you couldn't have just white or just black or just Latino schools, and you couldn't narrowly just force all the kids of one color into a school, what happened is they said, okay, Well, since we can't do that anymore, we need to throw a paywall around education. Because all these people that were artificially kept out and instantly have access. Immediately have access.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, they made it harder and harder for average people to go to school. That's why for not average people, but for your general, like the majority white folks, they made it harder for white folks to go to school just to prevent everybody else from going for free. And it's a cutting off your nose to spite your face kind of thing. It doesn't make any logical sense. It's all emotion.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't want we don't want said group to have access to said thing, and so we'll punish ourselves to prevent them from it. How many middle class white kids would be unburdened if school was compulsory again, where it's just free, where you can go to college for free? They would be instantly unburdened. But because the schools were getting segregated all across the country, and there was this fear of an educated proletariat, as they put it, they said, we're going to use the state of California as kind of the test base for charging tuition for schools.
Right.
And all these other states to follow suit, because it's a good way to keep people in control, where you limit their access to knowledge. There's like a knocking on your end.
Yeah, I was on the computer.
Oh, it's like is it?
Might be yours because hold on. Can you hear that? Yeah, I heard hey knock. Yeah, my mic's right here. Nothing's touching it.
There's something that like let me turn off my mic real quick. Sorry, guys. See if I still hear it. Yeah, it's like a metal sounding thing. You can hear it on the playback, but it's like a metal knocking kind of thing. So, anyway, so what we're saying is they artificially limited access to college just because they wanted to control who had access to it. Why would they do that? That's an interesting thing. And a lot of times it comes from the fact that limiting knowledge allows you to, when you limit people's knowledge, it allows you to push through things that they may not agree with just because they don't understand what you're talking about. And I think that's informed a lot of the debate culture that we have right now. There are plenty of times where somebody who has no earthly idea what they're talking about will fight to have the last word with you about a thing that they have no concept of. So we talked about the audience becoming the real target, and I kind of mentioned the need for the last word. Okay. So what does having the last word create for your kids? For my kids, having the last word makes them feel like they won. My daughter is really good at that. She feels like she won the argument when she has the last word. Gives them a sense of control. They are controlling the flow of the conversation. It makes it feel like there's a level of finality on it. It's not open-ended. They had their last word, even if nothing's changed. And so more times than not in these online debates, when somebody goes radio silent, the reason why you don't see people just say, you know what, we're not going to agree on this, I'm done, is because it feels like it's incomplete. It feels like you're ceding the point. And sometimes the person on the other end takes it as a win. You can't defend your ideas. That's why you've decided not to do it. That's what happened to my live stream, where I told the guy, I'm not going to do voice chat with you to debate about something that I'm barely talking about on this platform. Are you serious? Were you scared? No, I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to get on the phone and talk to. That's like a nightmare on my downtime, sitting there talking to somebody on the phone. Are you serious? Arguing with a stranger on the phone? But in his mind, because I refused to engage that debate on his terms, I didn't have strong enough convictions in my ideas and blah, 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 and all kinds of other random stuff. And I'm sitting there like, bro, I was a debate nerd through middle school. I understand like what actual debate is, and what you're proposing is an argument. And I don't want to argue with somebody online. So what is it about that feeling of losing one of those verbal engagements, Fearless? What do you think it is? Why do you think people have such, they want to lose that engagement? They don't want to lose that verbal thing.
Again, man, ego. You know, I mean, for me, it goes right back to self actualization. You know, that a sense of belongingness,
Hmm.
a sense of aesthetics of looking good. You know, if anything, you know, you can use Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs to justify
Hmm.
why people feel the way that they do, especially when it comes to that.
Hmm.
That, you know, they may have, you know, the basic needs covered for the most part, but maybe they don't feel like they belong and they want to feel like they belong to something.
Right.
You know, if you take the Civil War, if you take most wars here in America, why was it that when the natives were taking the, the colonizers hostage, when it was time to let them go, why do you think most of them wanted to stay? They didn't want to go back to what they were doing before. They didn't want to go back to the other white people. They didn't want to be around them anymore
Hmm.
because they never been treated with such respect, with such dignity, with such honor in general.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? They understood that these people have principles. There's certain stuff that they do not do and they will not do. Period. What?
But
What?
that.
And then if I go back to my camp, it's literally every man for himself.
Hmm.
Here, no, it's the chief is for everybody. Period. The tribe represents everybody. Period. We all pitch in. What? Come on now.
And so what you experienced, what you just said, what you just mentioned was that's a disruption of the narrative that they actually come in with. That's a just that it sounds improbable. And because it sounds improbable, people won't believe it's true. You can look in a history book and validate that.
Hmm.
But it sounds improbable. Just like, okay, so the argument, you've heard it, I've heard it. Well, there are black people that own slaves, right? You've heard that one, right? And it's like, okay, that sounds like it could be, so slavery was the way it was in the Americas and blah blah blah. It's true. But then you add a bit of nuance, like, well, a lot of times those black slave owners, they were buying members of their family's freedom. And since there was no logistical pathway to make a slave free for a long time, they had to continue to have them documented as slaves, even though they bought their freedom.
Hmm.
That's not such a good narrative, because it's like, well, why is society like that? I don't know. Maybe you need to ask the people that were in charge of that at that time and why it was set up in that manner. But
Or came up with the story in general.
it feels like a compelling narrative, but it sounds so if it sounds so unlikely that that would be the case, that we just reduce everybody to what the dominant society was doing to people at the time, and not everybody thought that same way. For
Right.
them, that was the only pathway to get access to their wives and kids and nieces and nephews and stuff, was to, as a black person, purchase them and buy them as slaves, because there was no mechanism to say this black person is now a free person under the law. They were born a slave and they were going to die a slave, and that's how society viewed them. And so if that person didn't have ownership of them, which led to a whole nother thing about, are black people allowed to have property rights in this country? um they actually had to go through the process, but when you phrase it like that, they don't get it. Just like the
Right.
entire, well, Africans were selling other Africans into slavery. Well, there are a lot of nuances that came with that. And you guys don't want to hear the nuances because it starts stripping away the narrative that you're
Hmm.
used to believing it. And it sounds improbable, but it was real, as opposed to the one that sounds real but was really just a lie.
Right. I mean, literally, and that's always been really funny to me too, because first off, I mean, Africa is a continent.
Right.
So it's like, well, you guys are selling each other. Like, no, you Africa has 54 Americas in it.
Yeah.
Listen, 54 Americas in it. right?
Mhm.
54 different Americas, right? And so, like I always tell people, people on the West Coast don't do the same thing that people on the East Coast do.
Exactly.
People in the South don't do the same thing that the people in North Dakota do, which is still America. They don't do the same stuff. Or people in Alaska doesn't do the same thing that people in Utah do or Arizona does for that matter.
Right.
So we do, and most of the time you also got to remember what look at our political climate right now.
Hmm.
Think about what the right and the left are doing to each other now. You know what I'm saying? Like the right has said on multiple occasions that if anything happens to y'all, we don't care. Like
Hmm.
your lives mean nothing. So you don't think that if somebody were to come here and start collecting the people from the left, the
Hmm.
people from the right would be like, hey,
Well,
no, we need to keep them. We're Americans.
yeah.
No, take those motherfuckers.
Well,
Take
and
them.
the idea,
Regardless of whether you know what they're going to do with them or not, is irrelevant. Get them out of our country.
yeah, because we've otherized them, and the idea of right versus left, the concept that these political names that we ascribe to right wing politics and left wing politics, that it actually means something. Like a Democrat and Republican actually means something, as opposed to just a label of what it currently means right now. Because for a long time in the country, Republicans were liberal, Democrats were the conservative ones. It's flipped.
Right. But my point in general
Mhm.
is just that there's 54 of those type of countries in
Right.
Africa. So when you're saying that, well, you guys are selling each other to each other, first and foremost, again, you have you have to look at what was happening at that particular time. The
Mhm.
people that they were selling off were imprisoned or they caught them because of a war.
There were others. They weren't
They were
countrymen.
others. They were not the same. Most of the time, they weren't.
Yeah.
They were a tribe or two over, and we don't mess with this tribe, and they gotta go. Same shit that we have here today. That if you don't like the way that a person's political beliefs are, you will conjure up a way to get rid of them. It's the same shit that we do here.
Well,
We'll
okay.
throw you in jail, or we'll get rid of you.
And so let's go to that because I want to. They weren't countrymen. They didn't see each other as kinfolk or countrymen.
No, they no.
They shared a skin. They shared a skin color in some cases, and more
They,
not.
they shared a continent.
They shared a continent.
That's all
They
it
didn't share
was.
anything else. But then
Nothing else.
we overlooked the fact that hell, look at what happened in the United Kingdom. The reason why it's called the United Kingdom. There's nothing but wars. There's a whole history
That's all it was.
Of white British people fighting other white British people. Italy was the same thing. All these places had this inner, like, they looked alike. Some of them may even shared a language or a language that was similar, but there
Mhm.
were others over here in Scotland. They Scottish over here. We English. What are you doing over here? It was always that. And so when we use that narrative to talk about, well, what happened in Africa? Well, I mean, you got Africans selling Africans. Well, I mean, this tribe, this one tribe over here that was at war with this other tribe, and that's typically what happened. That's the only place that we do that is Africa. We don't talk about the wars that were going on in they made a whole movie about Braveheart. I mean, what they were drawing and quartering folks.
Oh man,
were they like if you were they different? They're all from the same continent or country, or they're all from the same landmass,
geographical area. Yeah,
geographical area, shared ancestry. They shared some religions, some languages. I know that there were differences between them, but there's other people. The only place we do that is Africa. The only place we do that is Africa. in the modern world. But every single major continent, every single continent that has multiple countries or multiple, like even China was at war with China in different parts. Japan was at war with Japan and other eras. Europe was at war with Europe. We had World War I, World War II.
Right.
You know, if you get in Eastern Europe, then people, some of them are sharing languages. They may even be distant cousins. They still at war with each other. And so when we have that conversation, the narrative never really expands anywhere past Africa because it's an easy narrative. It's an easy narrative that's been passed down for so many generations. We just latch on to it. Mm-hmm. So, okay. So we talked about the need for the last word. Silence is uncomfortable. That's why we don't deal with uncomfortable silences. We like to fill the air with words. I'm guilty of it when it starts getting uncomfortable. People letting things go. Why can't people let things go?
Yeah, let's end it on this one.
Okay.
Yeah, we can kind of pick up for the next one. Yeah, I love that. Hold on. The need for letting go. We already did that one. Okay. Disagreements create internal tension. People feel unsettled, frustrated, incomplete. Responding relieves that tension. The response is not always about, oh, please, correcting the other person. It's about resolving your own discomfort.
Okay. That's true. Now, do you mind jumping into touching a little bit on number 7? Because I think that it's kind of the lie.
Yeah, so the illusion of correcting people, the assumption, if I can't explain it clearly, they will understand. The reality is that most people are not there to be corrected. They're there to defend their position.
And that's the point.
So the argument becomes repetitive, escalation, as well as a performance, not learning. And again, we kind of touched on that before when we talked about performing in front of a different crowd. Instead of wanting to learn, you're there to perform.
Yep.
You know, so it's literally that part of correcting another person is kind of that same thing too. So when you're talking to a person, it's a question of, do you want to learn anything, or do you already know what you need to know, which is called a saturation point. A saturation point means that you know everything that you need to know. You don't need to know anymore. Yeah. And when people get to that point, there's nothing else that you can say to them. There's no amount of information you can give them. Because even if they did read it, they're not going to care.
Right.
They don't care.
I think that's the point, that most people, like, they don't want to be right. They want to give the performance of somebody who's right. They don't want to be factually accurate. It's more about giving the performance of somebody who's factually accurate. Because if it was truly about pursuit of truth, then you would deal with truths that don't make things look as good as you think they do.
Right.
That's the challenge on social media. It's all about the performance on the stage and feeling right as opposed to being factually accurate. All right. So I think that's a good ending point, Fearless. What do you think?
I think so too, man.
All right. We're going to pick this back up next week and talk about the social media and incentives of the performance of being right.
And then we can go back to why people can't let things go.
Yeah.
Like, cause that's a banger though.
I've had people come back and write entire script. Matter of fact, I got told to, like, this dude let this sit for a couple of days because I asked him a question on something, and a couple of days later, I got an inbox on Facebook that says, "Why don't you go back to Africa?" Now, I didn't have anything to do with what we were talking about.
Are you from Africa?
No.
Have you? Like, not at all?
No.
Okay.
It was just, I got to get this off my chest. I can't think anything else. So I'm going to say this kind of racist thing to hurt his feelings. I was like, wow, that was random out of nowhere. Like a couple days later. And I had to look it up. Like, who is this person? Why are they telling me to go back to Africa? Well, it was because there was a Facebook argument or thread or comment. I said something they disagreed with. And that was the reply. Why don't you go back to Africa? And it was really apropos of nothing because it wasn't even really connected to that. It wasn't even anything racial or anything. I just disagreed with him.
Yeah.
So anyway, guys, we appreciate y'all tuning in. We're going to revisit this next week. This week, the assignment is let's go out there and try and realize when you're having one of these engagements on your social media platform. Am I trying to win the argument or am I debating for the sake of knowledge? Test yourself on that one and get back to us. Leave it in the comments if you realize that about yourself.
But sure.
That's all I got. I'm Brian.
Fearless.
We'll talk to y'all later.
All right. See you guys.
Peace.